What's going on YouTube? Rob here from Cars and Tech by JDM City, and today we're going to install the Chromecast in your car. The first thing you're going to need is a car that has an aftermarket radio that accepts an input of some sort. The next thing you're going to need is a Chromecast and a power source. So my power source that I chose is a DC to DC converter that allows me to hardwire it into my car. This is the full power converter. It converts a 12 volt current to a 5 volt current for USB. It has two USBs at 1.5 amps each and has a positive and negative power lead. This will allow you to hardwire it into your car and not have to use the cigarette lighter USB adapters. The next two things you need are really dependent upon the head unit that you have. If you have an app radio 2 or higher, there's an HDMI input in the back, which you could simply plug your Chromecast into and then run the USB power over to either that adapter or one of the cigarette lighter adapters. If you don't have an app radio 2 or higher, you have to look to see what your radio supports. If it supports RCA in the back, all you need is the RCA to RCA cables. And this little guy. This converts your HDMI input into the RCA output. If you don't have that, and you have maybe a front input like I do, you would need this exact cable. It's not RCA to RCA, it is this like auxiliary 3.5 millimeter jack to RCA. So this will allow me to hook it up into the front, have it become an RCA signal. It'll plug into this, which then takes the signal from the Chromecast. Let's take a closer look at both of these. Here's a look at our HDMI to RCA adapter box. The only accessory that comes with it is the USB cable. On the left side is the HDMI input where we'd plug in the Chromecast, and on the right side are the RCA outputs where we'd be plugging our cable into. Underneath the HDMI to audio video logo, we will see the USB power input and the PAL and NTSC switch. We will be leaving it on NTSC since this is North America's standard. Of course, we have our Chromecast, which also needs USB power. That brings us to our power adapter. It has two USB inputs, and therefore allows us to easily hook up these two USB sources. And lastly, we have our RCA to 3.5 millimeter cable. All the links to these items will be right below that like button in the description. Hopefully none of this is too intimidating. So let's put it together as if it were actually going to be installed into your car. So we'll start with the Chromecast. We don't need the wall adapter anymore because we're going to have an input for this. Put that back in. So your Chromecast will be plugged in. Here, we will plug one of these USBs into one of the USBs from the power side. Then we take out our HDMI to RCA adapter and USB cable. And the USB will be powered by this USB port. So the only loose things we have are these two power cables. These would be the way we hardwired into the car. Red is positive, black is ground. And if you don't want to use this, you could just use that cigarette lighter. But you would still have the wires coming out somewhere. This is the way to hide those wires. Open. And we'll take these. If you need this cable, the procedure is going to be the same, but this is going to run to the front of my head unit. You may have the RCA to RCA, and that will go into the back of the head unit. So this would simply plug in yellow to yellow, white to white, red to red. And now the Chromecast plugs into the HDMI side. Make sure the NTSC, the switch is switched to NTSC. And the only two things we have open in this little cluster is the input that goes into the head unit and the power. Not that complicated, is it? So now it's time for us to put this exact same setup into our car.
Every car is going to be different when it comes to running the wires for your head unit. To take apart your console, you should look up videos on how to do that. If you already have an aftermarket head unit installed, you probably know how to do this already. So just go through the regular procedures you would to remove everything to get to the back of the radio. For me, I don't have inputs in the back, so I'm running it through the front auxiliary input. I still need to remove my radio in order to route those RCA cables out to my glove box that's on the passenger side. I'm going to run the auxiliary port underneath my radio to neatly tuck in and plug into that front auxiliary. If you have regular RCA inputs in the back, you don't have to run anything to the front, and you could run these directly to your glove box or wherever else you want to mount them. Each car is going to be different, and you may want them tucked away somewhere neater. I will eventually remove them from the glove box and mount all the hardware to the back of the glove box so that it's all away and I have full use of that. So as you can see here, it neatly tucks into the radio. So a 12-foot cable was a little excessive. If you get a long cable, bound it up, use a zip tie to tie it all together. Make sure you leave a little bit of slack for the RCA cables so that you can have room to play. Plug in your RCA cables into the box. I ran into an issue later on, and apparently the pinout on the auxiliary part of the RCA cable were incorrect, and I had to swap the yellow and red ports. So if that happens to you, don't worry about it, just do the swap. For now, we're just going to tuck everything into the glove box. If you want to place it somewhere else, you can. I'm going to probably mount everything in the rear of the glove box if I can, just so it's clean out of the way and I have full use of that. So for now, we'll leave it there. So if you decided to go the route that I did and use a power converter rather than using a cigarette lighter adapter for the 2 USB ports, I recommend tapping a switchable source such as the cigarette lighter from the fuse box. The inside fuse box in my car happens to be right next to the glove box. So I simply stripped some more sheath off of the red wire from that converter box and tapped the fuse directly. You could do this in a number of ways, but I chose to do it this way. As for the negative, the black wire, you could run it to any metal source that's underneath somewhere. I found a bolt that was not too far from my glove box that I was able to extend the wire from the converter and run it to there. And then it's grounded. It's not that hard. It's pretty simple, just connect it to a bolt that goes into the body of the car. Now that everything's installed, we can power on the radio and switch to our video input, and we'll see the Chromecast ready to start setup. I apologize for the horizontal banding that's going across. One of my cables were a little bit loose, but that shouldn't be a problem with you once you push everything together. So in order to set this up, you need 2 phones. The reason why you need 2 phones is because you're going to be using it on mobile hotspot. When using mobile hotspot with your phone, you're on the same network as your Chromecast. However, in the Chromecast app, it tells you please enable Wi-Fi because it does not see that you are on a Wi-Fi network. So enable your hotspot and grab another phone. Connect that phone to your hotspot and proceed with the regular setup procedures on your Chromecast setup screen. After it's set up, you'll be able to connect to it with your main phone that you're going to use. However, you will never be able to use the Chromecast app, which manages the actual device itself, unless you're connected with another device to it. The only time this will make a difference is if you need to manually change a setting on your Chromecast, or factory reset it, and so forth. As you can see here, it connected, and once it connected to the internet, it was set up, it asked for an update. I'll let it go through the update process, it automatically reboots, and then comes back to the main screen. From here, you can use your original phone, for me that's the Nexus 6, to cast anything you want. You no longer need the other phone that you used to initially set up the Chromecast. The only time scaling is an issue is during some splash screens. So if you notice when we loaded this video, the loading icon was on the far right because it's expecting a much larger screen to fill up. After it loads and plays the video, the scaling is correct and fits inside the window the way it should be. A cool thing about casting your screen is that the app Automate is a perfect clone of Android Auto. So you can essentially have an Android Auto style interface on your radio without dishing out another $700 or more for a new head unit. That was the very quick run through of having a Chromecast installed into your car. If you have any questions, you could comment below. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and if it's helped. All the products will be in the description below if you'd like to pick them up. Hope you've enjoyed.